welcome back into the studio. And you've just seen a fabulous tour of Mary's Organic Garden from Woodlands House Hotel in Adare in County Limerick. And we're delighted to have Mary herself on a Zoom call, along with Caoimhin the gardener and Ciaran from Johnstown Garden Centre, our sponsors who are making it all possible. So hello, everyone.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Good.
Mary, you just said to me there a few minutes ago, Zoom is not your thing. And I said, with the amount of stuff you've achieved in your life, it was such a minor thing for you to do. You're some woman for one woman. I absolutely love your whole ethos about everything. What is your favourite plant in your garden?
Potatoes. The
Really?
potatoes are my favourite plant. I absolutely love potatoes. I love them to eat, number one. And number two is that whole sense of waiting for the spring to sow and waiting for the summer to harvest. And I was waiting for the 29th of June so much to harvest them and just stick the fork in and just see the potatoes roll out with the earth. To me, that's the most incredible feeling. I just love it, absolutely. And we have the purple potatoes and we have purple blue or whatever with Duke of York and Orla. And what's the other one?
Casablanca and Vitabella.
And like potatoes, you might say there are non-exotic, but there are some fantastic varieties. That whole sense of, opening up the earth and feeding it, and it brings me back to my childhood. Of course, that was the first job I did when I went with my father to the garden, was dig the potatoes for the dinner. So that's my love of potatoes.
And do you move the potatoes every year then, or do you keep them in the same spot?
We move them every year. Yeah, our garden is just 3 years old, so it's new ground, really. It's new ground.
Brilliant. And Caoimhin, the next question I'm going to ask you, I keep saying client because that's what we normally have, but a viewer texted in to say, I'm a beginner. What's the best vegetable to plant to start?
I suppose the best thing to plant to start is to plant something that you actually like to eat yourself. Because myself, I remember when I started first, I grew radishes, and I probably grew 10,000 radishes, and I had 10,000 radishes in my kitchen, and I don't even eat radishes. So I guess the first thing to do is to start out small, a small little patch, and grow something that you like to eat. That's probably the most important thing to do. None of them are that difficult. Just grow something that you like to eat, and then if you get a grow for it, you'll build on that.
I had quite a few radishes myself the first time, and I don't eat them either. And What's your favourite veg to grow then?
I suppose it'd be between the tomatoes and the garlic, really, just because they're both kind of milestone crops. Like, it's always a milestone every year when you plant a tomato seed, and it's a milestone when you plant the tomato, and it's kind of another milestone when you harvest the first ripe tomato. It's kind of something you always remember every year. And the same with the garlic, like sowing the garlic and harvesting the garlic are always 2 days. I remember every year because they're kind of, it's a sense of achievement and a kind of sense of looking into the future in the fall when you're planting your garlic.
And you mentioned tomatoes there. When they get to a certain height, do you cut them? What do you do?
So where the fruits are, it's called a truss, and you'd leave each plant have 6 to 8 trusses. And when they have 6 to 8 trusses of fruit set, you generally cut the top off the plant then to let the plant focus down below.
Bit I hate. I never know when to do that. And then you take out the little bit of the joint as well, don't you?
Yeah, and the suckers always come out of the leaf at a 45-degree angle and kind of just keep pruning away. Once you understand the pruning, you'll actually start to enjoy it. It's actually a lovely job.
Good, excellent. Ciaran, the next one is for you. What are the top 3 plants to add colour for autumn and winter?
Oh, top 3 for autumn and winter. Well, my top one definitely would be a plant called Daphne. Daphne Balua, and there's a number of different varieties of that, like Jacqueline Pastel. And it's a shrub which grows to about maybe 6 feet in height, and the flowers come out some years as early as December, and they go through then January and February, and it has the most unbelievably gorgeous scent, and it's super strong as well. So you don't even need to plant it close to a back door or anything like that. You get it all over the garden. So Daphne Balua. Then I suppose another one then would be witch hazel, Hamamelis mollis, or one of those. Again, for their fragrance and winter flowers, they flower on bare stems, and they can have yellow, orange, or red flowers. They're superb plants then for colour. And then the other one, also a shrub, would be what they commonly call Christmas box, which has the wonderful name of Sarcococca confusa. And that again is another fragrant flowered shrub, a small evergreen shrub. and they flower for about 6 weeks after Christmas time, and again, beautifully fragrant.
That's brilliant. I actually have winter box in my house, and I move it from a pot, and I got it in Johnstown. I move it from a pot out the back when it's not flowering and not scented, and then I bring it out again in winter. But it's got a bit yellow, so does that mean it needs to be replanted? It's not getting...
Yeah. If it's in a container, it probably is needing some fertilizer.
Okay.
So what I do with feeding each year is I give them something like a fish blood and bone meal once in the springtime, maybe top that up a second time during the year. But at this time of year, just use some sort of liquid seaweed food or something like that, and do that every kind of now and again, and every 2 weeks up until the end of August or so, and that'll green them up nicely.
Brilliant. I'll show you some pictures when I do it.
Oh,
Mary,
good.
another viewer has texted in, I've slugs, help. And one of the lads here has their homeless snails. They're not slugs. So how does the viewer get rid of them or deal with slugs?
I think I'm going to hand that one over to Caoimhin.
I suppose the thing about slugs is if you only have 10 plants and you lose 2 plants, it's a big deal. But I find we don't have any problem with slugs in the garden. Like I have the same pack of slug pellets. They're organic this year, and I haven't actually used them yet, just because if you grow plenty, there's kind of plenty for everyone, you know, that kind of way. One thing I do use is seaweed dust. I find that quite good. So if plants, after just being transplanted out, I give the bed a little dressing of seaweed dust, and it's quite salty, and it often puts slugs out. And on top of that, then you're adding some bit of fertilizer to the ground. Slugs don't really like wet. They hate they love timber and stuff like that around raised beds. So maybe seaweed dust would be my top tip. It's something that you're feeding the soil, and it's natural, and it'll keep the slugs away.
Learning so much myself. It's great. Mary, another viewer wants to know, they want to get into growing fruit. What would you recommend for them to start?
Strawberries, I suppose, is number one, because you know, you plant them along the ground, and then you have the strawberry runner, and you can harvest them, and you can plant them for the following year for your plants. And they also, they have a lovely white flower, and then when they're coming to fruit, the red fruit, and they just look amazing. So I would say strawberries, and would plant them different varieties early, mid and late seasons, that you'd have them all over the summer, really right into the fall. And you have some great, we have Cambridge favourites you grow for flavour, El Santa, and what's the other one we have?
Symphony.
Symphony. So those are the ones we have. They're the easiest, and raspberries are very easy. They just grow crazy, absolutely, and the flavour is fantastic. And we have a particular type of raspberry that dies off in the fall, and the winter, and then starts to regrow. It's a very late variety. Do you have a name for it, Caoimhin?
It's the Autumn Bliss.
Autumn Bliss, and that gives a great show of raspberries when everything else is kind of, you know, going. So raspberries and the strawberries are my favourite, absolutely. Followed by the blackcurrants, and we've had a wonderful crop of blackcurrants this year, and of course the apples we have growing along the hedge, along the wire. And Adare is a great place for apples. Well, it's the soil of what it is. Adare has a great reputation, and for apple growing, the past, and through the meeting neighbours and older people and having the chats, I discovered that Adare has such a reputation for apples, and I planted we have a lot of apples planted. So hopefully make the cider soon when we have enough, you know. So that's the plan. They're my favourites, really.
That's a great plan you have for those apples. Caoimhin, the next question, a benefit of a polytunnel.
I suppose it is worth it, really. The big benefit for a polytunnel is when it's raining. Do you know, even I'd never do every job in the polytunnel. I always leave something for a rainy day. And when it does rain, then you can still go inside and everything grows better in there. I mean, if you plant anything in a tunnel, it's going to grow better in there. And it is like, it'll give back for years and years and years. Like whatever you invest in it, you will get it back, like, you know. It's something, if you are interested in growing, it's definitely something everyone should have, like if they have room for it. Like, and even a small little tunnel, even if you had a tiny little tunnel, you could just grow things in pots and stuff like that around the place. But it's if you do get the love for it, it definitely is the next step, and it's worth the investment. Like.
Excellent. And then Ciaran, what will I plant in my window boxes for autumn and my pots? If I'm looking just a little bit ahead, because we're into July, what would you recommend I go by and put in my
I hope you're not thinking the summer's over.
Not either.
Well, hang on, lads. Just so it's clear, Adele and myself have spent the last 8 weeks doing this.
Well,
so whatever I had in my pots are long dead because they haven't even got watered. So I need to replace what was in them.
Well, those who treat their window boxes now with neglect might need to be replanted them, all right. So what you'll get actually for the autumn season would be things like cyclamens will be coming in at a lot of those now. And autumn will be the time, though, when you're really planting up for the winter and the following spring. So the bulbs will be coming available. So everything like dwarf tulips, crocuses, dwarf narcissi, all those types of things. And even just a container packed with bulbs, plant them up in layers in the container, smaller ones on top, bigger ones lower down, will give you months of colour going through from kind of February until kind of April or so, April, May. And then for a bit of extra, for autumn colour, you could put in the cyclamens with those on top of them. And then the cyclamens will tend to go off, particularly as coming up to Christmas, as the weather gets a bit colder, and replant then with things like then primulas, even spring heathers and things like that. And you'll always have something in colour right through the season. And I think what window boxes, it's a good idea to approach them not just like as 2 seasons. You get much more out of them if you plan like to do an autumn one and then kind of like a late winter, and then even kind of jazz them up a bit for late spring, and then plant them up again in summer, kind of mid to the end of May, and that'll keep it going if you look after them until about October.
Okay, you had to get that one in, didn't you? Herbs, can you grow them indoors? That's for Mary or Caoimhin.
Yeah, you can grow most of them indoors. The one problem we'd find a lot of time with stuff indoors is green fly. You know, you get a nice basil plant in the supermarket and you bring it home and suddenly it's covered in green fly. Garlic spray is actually a good remedy for that, to get rid of them or just to give them a rinse off. But most things actually would prefer to be outside because the environment inside can be quite unnatural in a way, you know. You can maybe start them inside, and as they get a bit bigger, you can move them outside. But anything like parsley now or rosemary would lovely be on a window box outside. The rosemary would obviously get too big eventually, but things like parsley now and stuff like that and thyme would grow perfect in a window box outside.
And what was that tip for green fly garlic? What?
So garlic spray, if you just get some cloves of garlic and just chop them up into a little water and put it in a spray bottle, maybe leave it there for a few days to kind of soak, and just spray it on the plant. And that's really good for it's just an organic solution to get rid of aphids and green fly.
So we can put that on roses and all sorts of things?
On roses you can, but it's not as effective as the other stuff that most people use. But the stuff that other people use, like the rose clear, kills insects. So you can either kill loads of insects or use the garlic. It's kind of your choice, really.
Yeah, no, I've been gardening organically for 20 years myself as well, so there's no fear of me using it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Just to go back to something Ciaran said, we're all doing this, and I got into this, as you know, in memory of my son Rian. And when you mentioned witch hazel, I had a little wobble. I planted a witch hazel because it's the one flower that flowers, that flowers every year on his anniversary, and without fail the garden is absolutely miserable. There's not another thing in it, and this little yellow flower comes out on this bare tree every year, and his 2 godparents got one each as well. And I think it's always lovely to have something that, you know, I'm not very big into dates, but I love gardening, I love flowers and seasonal stuff. And like you were saying, Caoimhin, there, you know, the garlic marks a particular day, and, you know, Mary was saying the same with the spuds. I think it's lovely to see those shrubs or trees or whatever it is coming back every year, and they remind you of something, whatever that is, the day you got married or whatever. But I think it's lovely to mark things with plants, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It is. Yeah, I mean, kind of plants are a great kind of thing for memory, and something with a scented flower. Lots of time, like in a garden centre, you get people asking for, you know, a rose or a plant because they remember it from their grandmother's garden, or they remember, you know, that. So it is a great thing, like for helping us mark time, and particularly kind of trees and shrubs which are so long lasting, will often outlive us, you know. So there'll be monuments into the future.
Once they're watered and looked after in those pots.
Yeah. Well, if they're out in the garden, I mean, nature's doing a lot of that work for you. So
It's fantastic during the lockdown to have the garden. It was absolutely fantastic. It was definitely my sanity. But certain plants, you know, like sweet pea, for instance, I had them in my bridal bouquet when I got married in 1973. So every time I see a sweet pea, and when my family see the sweet pea, my sisters, whatever, they'd always talk about the sweet peas because they were very unusual at the time to have them. But I carry my bouquet for my scent, for the scent. It's very important to me.
I love sweet pea, and every year I go by, is it Spencer? There's a mix.
Yeah.
Spencer mix, and I plant them, and exactly that, Mary. I think they're gorgeous just to put on the table in the kitchen and just enjoy the scent.
Yeah. And there's some lovely varieties out there, like the sweet pea. So one of my old favorites of the sweet pea, one we call Matucana, and it's got a bicoloured flower, blue and kind of wine colour, and the perfume from that is really, really strong. It's a really old variety. I think it was bred by a monk in Sicily hundreds of years ago or something, and so there's a lot of nice stories about the plants too as well, which is nice to share.
It's still going strong, and I'm going to getting a wrap-up single here. I could talk to you all day, but I was on a biophilic trip on the National Botanic Gardens there a while ago, and they were saying how important it is to get your hands into the soil, get dirty and enjoy yourself, and it's so good for your soul, as Mary was saying, and everybody I'm sure here thinks the same thing. So thank you all so much for coming in today on Zoom and bringing us around the beautiful garden at Fitzgerald's Woodlands House Hotel in Adare. And also thank you, Ciaran and Johnstown Garden Centre, for sponsoring both our garden episodes. So thank you so much, guys.
No problem.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.